Hello, and welcome back to this month's Japanese to English comparison of the chapter. If this is your first time here, thank you for coming. In addition to my usual comments, I'll also be providing additional insight based on questions users on YouTube, X, and Reddit have asked. If you're curious about specific insights surrounding specific lines, overall character tone, and what kinds of decisions I made while translating, I also have a live stream of me translating the chapter. The title is Mo narette. My translation was, I'm already used to it. The official was, used to it. Let's talk about the Japanese first, before we talk about the translation. The chapter title is a line Sakura says later in the chapter, but you probably didn't know that it was actually written to match with her specific style of speaking. This chisaitsu here wouldn't usually be used. It would be mo nareteru, but narette drops the teru and gives it this kind of, feeling, and a much more casual Sakura style feel. The mo in this case is where the already comes from, but in Japanese, the title does feel shorter and snappier, which is likely why the official decided to drop it from their translation. Text behind code. Setsujoku no hi wa shizuka ni moeru. My translation. The flame of vindication quietly burns. Vindication is a bit of a complicated word in English, and to be honest, I think vengeance would have worked just as well, but it's fine. In Japanese, the word setsujoku is usually used for scenarios where someone sets out to wash away the shame of a past defeat in order to restore their honor, to avenge past humiliation. So essentially, Code is setting out to seek vengeance because of the humiliation he suffered at Boruto and Sasuke's hands, but because he's being patient about attempting to do it right, it's burning quietly in the background. The reason I didn't choose something like smoldering is because it's still ablaze, but he's not showing it off, he's lying in wait. I also love how the kanji for both fire and burn are flame-colored and textured. It's a nice stylistic choice, and Code's outfit as well. It fits the kind of character he is. The classy Vegeta of Boruto. His classy little ego is sky-high. He might be my favorite character to translate. Ada and her teenage girl goddess complex is a close second. The text at the top. Mamushi gekiha go, sono togitama o te ni shita Boruto wa? My translation. After defeating the Shinju Mamushi, what will Boruto do with the soul thorn? The thorn soul. I know I've talked about thorn soul versus thorn bulb in the past, but just to reiterate, I use thorn soul. Viz uses thorn bulb. The kanji there are the kanji for thorn and soul. So where did Viz get bulb from, you might ask? My guess is it's because it's like the seedling of a tree and it looks like a bulb, like the start of the plant. Why do I still choose to use soul despite knowing the official's translation choice? Because I feel like the nuance of soul is important. The Shinju were said to possess the hidden parts of the person they're based on, which feels like the hidden parts of their soul. And in addition to that, when you stab the soul back into the tree, it returns the soul to that person. Side text on page 1. Mamushi o gekiha shi togitama o te ni ireta Boruto. Shikashi, ammari yuuchou ni shite wa irarenai you de. My translation. After defeating Mamushi, Boruto obtains the Thorn Soul, but it seems like he doesn't have time to waste. I don't have anything to say about that because it's kind of the same thing that was at the top. Writing bulbs on pages 2 to 3. Kusaru tte ino wa douyuu imi da? Kusaru to dou naru? What do you mean by the thorn bulb rotting away is the official translation, and my translation was, what do you mean it'll rot? What happens when it rots? This is a Kawaki line, by the way. You might wonder, why did I choose to bring this line up? It doesn't really change that much. Well, in Japanese, this question from Kawaki has emphasis dots. He doesn't just ask what it means, but what will happen as a result. And if you remember the end of the chapter, we'll see it happen. It feels like a specific foreshadowing moment for the end of the chapter, and the background behind Boruto's face as he says the person will die, as well as Kawaki's reaction panel, is black. Just a little side theory that it might be more important than it appears to be on the surface, but who knows. Konohamaru picking up Sarada. I already mentioned this on X, but when Konohamaru picks up Sarada, there's movement lines around her, and his hand to indicate that he just got her settled onto his shoulders. That little yo is a short sound that indicates you just picked something up or got something settled. It's short for yokkorasho, or sometimes yotto. You use it when you pick something up or sit yourself down into a seat. The official translated it to yo here, because this, without any context, can also mean hello, or yo, what's up, kind of yo. So this makes me wonder, can the official translator see the panels, or do they just get the text? because if they only get the text by itself as a script of sorts, which sometimes does happen in translation, that would explain this here being strange. I originally had it as, up you go, but then ended with, hup, thanks to somebody in the comments on my stream suggesting it from Link noises that Link makes. Master Konohamaru. If you're an OG who has been lurking since before my blog and YouTube days, you've probably heard this explanation several times, but for anyone who's new, I gotta put it in. The official translates sensei to master, but they also translate shisho to master. Sasuke as a master for Boruto, and Konohamaru as a master or teacher are two incredibly different roles with very different weight attached. To Boruto, the word master or shisho is a very personal relationship in which the master passes down their fighting style, all the things they've learned, and leaves them for their one singular pupil or student to inherit. It's not a general term at all, but one that comes with a lot of devotion and a huge sense of respect and interpersonal ties. And that's why in the most recent Q&A with Ikemoto, he mentions Sasuke was uncomfortable with it at first. Boruto is the only one who calls Sasuke Shisho, and because of this, Boruto is also Sasuke's only direct student, in terms of him passing down all of his knowledge to Boruto. For someone like Konohamaru, the term sensei is used, which is a much more general term applicable across various situations. It's an honorific you attach for teachers, doctors, published authors, and a variety of other jobs. Anyone can use that term for any person in that position. Even though Chocho isn't a part of Konohamaru's three-man cell, she calls him sensei, as would most of the kids in her generation. You also see this word later when the other doctor sticks his head in and asks for Sakura, he addresses her as Sakura-sensei. So just be aware that the levels of master for Sasuke and Boruto versus every other usage for any other random sensei are completely different. Ear to the ground, on page 6. Boruto says, I'm sure Code had his ear to the ground in the official translation, which is apparently an idiom. It means paying close attention to everything around you. I'd never heard of it before, but it's the same nuance-wise in Japanese. It basically just means to concentrate your attention in order to hear distant sounds more clearly. The other interesting thing is, Boruto is the one commenting about how the Shinju have claw marks all over their bodies, and that Code was probably listening in, so I'm wondering if he has encountered Code eavesdropping on him in the past through claw marks. Broad outcome categories, on page 7. In Japanese, the word koji uses here for broad outcome categories is dori, which literally means streets or paths, so it's like the branches of 10 paths or 10 directions. I thought that was interesting, so I just wanted to include it. Option 2. Code goes after Sarada, on page 8 to 9. The word koji uses here for going after Sarada is nerai tsukeru. Usually it would just be nerau on its own, but adding tsukeru makes the nuance change to going after Sarada with the intent to succeed. Code may be cunning, but he's also shrewd and a coward. In the first option, he runs away because he understands he has little chance at success. In the second option, he sees Sarada as his successful chance. Just a little extra nuance there. Also, because I know people care about specifics when it comes to Boruto's reactions, his reaction is nani, which he could have said huh, ha, the heck, どういう意味? Elaborate, but nani with the ... feels a little colder. Not cold as in he doesn't care, but cold as in how dare he, which probably plays into the taunting later. The first thing I want to note is Koji talking about Code's plan. The word that's used here, hitojichi or hostage, has a different reading marked in the furigana, which is esa or bait. It's a term used for the food that you feed animals, as well as like the cheese you'd put into a mousetrap. It's also the word used to describe what Kawaki and Boruto are to the Ten Tails, which is fodder in the English translation. So it changes the meaning of the word from just being about a hostage, as in anyone will do, to specifically taking Sarada hostage because she's bait that will work to lure Boruto. Option 3, neither, on pages 9 and 10. I also think it's important to note option 3 has emphasis dots around the something completely different part of that sentence, as well as the whole entire washes his hands of the divine trees and instead throws in with us part. So essentially, it's like it's bolded. Same as Kawaki's what happens to the soul thorn when it rots. Is this foreshadowing? Considering I don't think Boruto is going to let Sarada become a hostage, and even if she does become a hostage, it's highly likely that he'll save her, I don't know. I wouldn't be upset if Code became an ally, but if he doesn't, that would bring me to one of my theories that involves a lot of stuff plot-wise in the science department being set up for the revival of a dead human being, the village needing to be destroyed by someone for the flash forward to make sense unless they play it off as one possible future that never happened, or a major death potentially happening soon that Himawari can't reverse, like the rotting of a soul thorn, as well as potentially seeing what happens when a Shinju devours their target. There's a lot hinging on this fight. We shall see what happens in the next arc. Inujin haircut on page 10. I was asked about this by a user. The word Boruto keeps using for shaving Inujin's head is marugari. It's basically a buzz cut. You shave the head, but not so close that it's shiny or bald, just so close that you see the hairline and where the hair is growing. The for now part also has emphasis dots. Love that they bolded it in the official as well. Mother-daughter conversation on page 22 to 27. This is going to be a bigger section, so I'll group it by pages. Page 22. Ii no yo. Tsukau nada nante iwanai. Official. I know. I won't tell you to stop. Literal. It's alright. I won't tell you things like, don't use it. This is right after the hug. After Sarada struggles to explain why even though the Mangekyo is deteriorating her vision, she still wants to use it anyway, but she can't get the words out of her mouth. And the official, Sakura, starts off by saying, I know. Literally, it's alright. Both are comforting phrases mothers can use to soothe their daughters in both languages. I like the official's use of I know because it starts off the bat with a phrase that showcases the entire point of this conversation. Sakura understands, and she isn't going to blame Sarada for her decision, or tell her to stop even though it's dangerous. Then she follows it up in the official with, I won't tell you to stop. Either way, in Japanese, this sentence conveys the same sentiment. It's just a little bit more directly focused on using or not using Mangekyo, versus the official where it potentially implies stopping fighting entirely due to the damage to her eyes making the battlefield a dangerous place. だって、それはあんたがやろうとしていたこと、守ろうとするもののために、あんた自身が必要とした力、自ら生み出した強さなんだから。The official said, "'Cause it's something, a strength, that you yourself brought into being when you deemed you needed power in order to do and protect what you wanted to." The literal translation is, after all, that is for the things you are trying to do, for the sake of what you want to protect. It's a power that you deemed was necessary, a strength that you birthed life into with your own hands. Let's talk about this phrase by phrase. I had to throw the whole thing in because the official reworded the order a good bit. This is the first place where you see Sakura use a borderline slang in the official translation. She does have a very professional tone for work that she drops when she hugs Sarada. I think this use of "cuz" was an attempt to convey that change in tone. But in Japanese, she isn't using slang. She's just being more informal and gentle with her way of speaking. The reason the order is switched around is because Japanese sentence structure is very different. This is actually a technique called transposition in the translation world, where you change the construct from verbal to nominal because Japanese typically prefers verbal and English typically prefers nominal constructs, even though you can make them work in both languages. But I think it's important to note that in Japanese, the words power and strength both fall on the final two speech bubbles where it zooms in on Sakura's face. Also, I had a note in my translation that kind of wasn't legible when this was typeset, but it was supposed to say the word for the thing Sakura wants to protect can refer to people, objects, ideals, etc., a variety of things. So everything Sarada wants to protect, whether it's the village, Boruto, or her desire to become her Hokage, are all encompassed in that word in Japanese. Page 23. 私が口を出すことじゃない。サラダの覚悟の問題。それがあるなら大丈夫. The official says, so as long as you're aware and resolved, I'm cool with it. I won't interfere. The literal is, it's not my place to interfere. It's a matter of your resolve, Sarada. As long as you have that, it's alright. Again, they have Sakura using some slang here. She does switch down to using atashi instead of the more professional watashi, but other than that, the それがあるなら大丈夫 part does not sound slangy in the slightest, which is where the I'm cool with it comes from. I think the literal translation does a lot of the groundwork from here already, but I saw a lot of people nitpicking this line, so I guess I'll explain it in more depth. This whole start to the conversation was about Sakura not condemning her daughter for continuing to fight and getting hurt. She's still expressing worry and concern, but feels that it's not something she has any right to put a stop to. After all, it's a power Sarada got all on her own. She got that power because she had something she wanted to protect so strongly, things she felt like she needed to do no matter what. That's her resolve to lose her vision for the sake of this thing. And the next line is where Sakura drops the bomb that she knows what this thing is. Borutoの力になりたいんでしょ? The official is, you want to help Boruto, right? The literal is, Boruto's strength. You want to become it, don't you? Obviously, the underlying message of this line is to help Boruto, but Sakura knows there's more to it than that. Someone on X asked me about this, but becoming someone's strength and simply helping them are two different words in Japanese. Become his strength carries a heavier weight. In the Japanese dictionary Kotobanku, this word become someone's strength, or chikara ni naru, is defined in two ways. Number 1, to go to great lengths for someone, to offer assistance. Number 2, to be reliable, to depend on. When you decide to be someone's strength, it's because you like them, you respect them, you trust them. You may deeply empathize with them and treat their problems as if they were your own, in the sense that you want to share their burden. So it's less about providing assistance and more about being willing to sacrifice in order to provide that assistance because of how much you care for them, wanting to be someone reliable for them. I don't know if this is the first time Sakura has had this talk with Sarada, but from the continuance of the conversation, it seems like they haven't gotten to have any talk in regards to her Mangekyo at all yet. They likely talked about omnipotence and Sasuke going to help Boruto, but this is also probably the first time she's talked to her mom since realizing her feelings, and Sakura just already knows. In my opinion, Sarada tears up here because this is the moment Sakura goes against omnipotence. Even if it makes no sense, even though her memories have been messed with, she still believes and trusts Sarada's resolve. Sasuke did as well, but that was before Sarada really understood just how much this affected everyone, and it was also through the unlock of her Mangekyo that he believed her. Now she's been dealing with it for 3 frustration-filled years, and her mom, despite seeing her daughter get injured and hurt for a traitor, defies all logic and believes in her daughter's resolve over omnipotence, telling her that it's alright for her to fight for what she believes in when everyone else has been consistently telling her that it makes more sense to hold back, even those who understand what omnipotence has done. Sarada's shy little nod as she blushes and hides her face in response to it also tips Sakura off to the fact that now they become romantic feelings, and that leads us to the next line. Page 24. 本当にさ、つくづく私の子だよ。たった一人の男の子のためにさ、他の全部を投げ打ってもいいなんて。The official is, Yeesh, you truly are my child. To be willing to cast everything else aside, all for the sake of a single boy. The literal is, you really are my kid through and through. For the sake of just one single boy, to be fine with giving up on everything else. An important thing to note about this line before we get into other explanations is that the word nageute means to give something away without hesitation or to sacrifice and discard something else in order to achieve something. That's what's meant by casting everything else aside or giving up on it. Sakura is reflecting back on her past in this line and how much she sacrificed just to save Sasuke, looking at her daughter being seemingly willing to do the same for Boruto, losing her vision and yet willing to and wanting to continue fighting even at the risk of going completely blind. Sending him Sasuke, always going around openly defending him at the risk of her standing and her dream to become Hokage. Next line is, パパにもそっくり。いつだって何かとてつもないものに立ち向かってる。どんなお命を着せられようともね。パパのお兄さんもそうだった。The official is, you're also like your dad, always going up against something massive, no matter how bad the personal toll is. His brother too. The literal is, you're also just like your papa, constantly standing up against one enormous thing after another, even when false blame is pinned on you. Your papa's older brother was like that too. Note: the word for thing in the literal translation is the same as earlier, where it can encompass people, ideals, emotions, and objects. Before I get into the significance of papa, I want to talk about the meaning of the sentence. The specific words being used are talking about going up against something fearsome, something so overwhelming it's almost beyond human capacity, and standing up against it even when you end up falsely accused and blame and disgrace is pinned on you. As for the significance of papa, in Japan, after you get married and have a kid, you usually start referring to each other, especially in front of that kid, as mama and papa. Sometimes you say anata or dear, or otosan and okasan, which also means father and mother, but especially in front of young kids, it usually stays as mama and papa. Sarada never grew out of the habit of calling her parents mama and papa, which I think is a cute aspect of her personality. To further it, when Sakura calls Sasuke papa in front of her, it really kind of shows off their family bond. For those of you who are wondering, it would be unnatural in Japanese for Sakura to use the word oji-san for uncle, because that also just means a middle-aged man. That's why Boruto can call Sarada's parents auntie and uncle, because it doesn't always refer to a blood relative, but it's just something that happens in a lot of Asian cultures where there's titles to refer to people within a specific age group without using their name. Because Sakura is talking about Itachi as Sasuke's blood relative and not some random middle-aged man, she calls him Papa no Oni-san, or your papa's older brother, or your father's brother. I'm guessing Sarada might not know Itachi by name, and she might have heard a few things about him, just like Sakura is now saying here that he, along with Sasuke, had to shoulder a lot of unfair blame and stand up to a lot of fearsome and kind of inhumane levels of stuff. Page 25. 私はね、サラダ。パパとあんたのこと、何があっても信じるから。Official. Just know this, Sarada. I will always believe in you and your dad, no matter what. The literal is, Sarada, about you and Papa, no matter what happens, I believe in you. The only thing I really want to say about this line is, in Japanese, it feels like she's said this before. Especially since Sarada's wiping the tears from her eyes, it feels like this is a line she's said in the past and is now repeating. I can't be for sure, but that's the vibe it gives off. And the official's English, the just know this part, makes it feel like it's being said for the first time. Obviously, I can't say that with any certainty. I'm just saying in English it feels like it's a first, and in Japanese it's up to interpretation a little bit more. もう慣れっこなんだわ。家族のことでいろいろ言われんのもさ。The official. Besides, I'm already used to it, being lectured about my family. The literal is, I'm already used to it anyway, all those things people say about our or my family. Figurative is, I'm used to toughing it out. People always have something to say about our family, after all. This is a bit difficult to translate because the literal words being said really have an edge that builds the underlying figurative message. This is also the callback to the chapter title. So first we have mo naret, which is the cutoff form of I'm already used to it. And then konnan is this kind of stuff, implied this kind of crap. Dawa isn't used in the usual ojo-sama. Dawa, speech sense. It adds more of a it's whatever vibe to the sentence. Then you have kazoku no koto, which is like about my family, matters regarding my family, our history, our circumstances, the gossip surrounding us, all of that kind of stuff. Iro is literally various things, so that could be both good and bad, or just speculation, scrutiny, rumors, gossip, trash talk, praise, condolences, all that kind of stuff. Then iwaren is like saying, but it gives off this kind of spouting off instead of just simply saying it vibe. Nomo is like as well. So all these kinds of things that she experienced in her past as well, with the things people have been saying about them. And finally, sa, which just adds this kind of, vibe to the end, similar to Boruto's tebasa. All in all, this line is basically like, yeah, I'm used to people saying whatever the heck they want, let 'em yap, doesn't bother me. And to that, Sarada smiles big amidst her tears that have been wiped away. I feel like Ikemoto puts a lot of subtle nods to fan hate in his manga, whether it's zooming in on Kawaki with his middle finger up, Sumire and Sarada running away with smiles on their faces, mending their friendship despite a fight, and this just feels like another slap in the face to all the Sakura and Sarada haters, and encouragement for her fans to keep on keeping on, and brush off the criticism like the characters themselves are doing. Page 26. Briefly, I just wanted to comment, I did have the patient in room 8 in my Word doc translation, it just got excluded when it was typeset. Sorry about that. The meaning of Shannaro. Oh yeah, this is the famous Shannaro. I don't know if I ever talked about this line, so I'm going to take the opportunity to do that here for a second. The word sha in Japanese is like a victory sound of sorts. It's short for yossha, and it's something people often say when they win. They look down and clench their fists in a guts pose of sorts and say, sha. Sakura adds naro onto this, which is the construct for let's get blank, or basically let's become sha. Sarada on page 30 says it really fires her up, or kiai ga hairu no, which if you don't know, kiai is the term for those things you yell in martial arts as you punch and kick, like the ya or sh or ai sounds, and it's also just a word to show off your fighting spirit, motivation, or effort. This whole kiai ga hairu no means it makes her feel motivated and lights a fire under her, so to speak. This shouting of Shannaro felt like it was basically Sakura saying, no matter what happens, do your best, and you better come back home when it's all over. That's kind of how it felt to me. Another thing about Japanese culture is, parents don't often say I love you to their kids, and kids don't often say I love you to their parents. If at all. You can watch, there's this one YouTuber I forgot the name of off the top of my head, but they go around asking people to call their moms and say I love you. The mom always thinks they did something bad or they're about to go unalive themselves. Instead, parents and children and Japanese people in general typically show their love through their actions, like cutting up fruit for you while you're studying, telling you to be safe on your way out, sending you home with lots of home-cooked food, nagging you about putting on a jacket or drying your hair before you go out. In return, kids might put a lot of effort into studying for their parents, trying to get a good job so that they can support them when they get older, working hard for the future that their parents invested in, etc. This feels like Sakura's way of saying I love you to Sarada as well. This whole conversation was filled with it, little things here and there that indirectly said, don't worry, no matter what you do, I'll always love you. Now get out there and be the best that you can be. This conversation actually made me tear up. It was really heartfelt and beautiful, and I hope the people reading this chapter who felt the same can look past the criticism and enjoy this moment for all that it was. Sarada and Chocho's conversation on page 31 to 32. There were a couple things people were curious about, especially over on X, so I'm going to talk about this conversation in a little more depth as well. The first question that was asked was, how does Chocho describe Sarada's previous relationship with Kawaki? In the official, she says best bud. In Japanese, she says anna ni naka ga yokatta. This is important because if you didn't know, calling someone a friend or even a nakama is almost like the Japanese equivalent of bro-zoning them. A friend is closer than a nakama in the sense of a relationship, although I know anime like One Piece and Fairy Tail would have you think otherwise. A friend can be a nakama, but a nakama isn't necessarily a close friend, it's just someone who's a part of your group. So in One Piece, it's part of the crew. In Fairy Tail, it's anyone who's part of the guild. Gray is stated to be Natsu's friend. Everyone else is a nakama. Lucy and Lisana are someone he gets along well with, or a nakagai hito. Erza is just Erza. Vidgeteer, that guy who dances with a turban on, is also a nakama. Everyone in the guild is a nakama. It's a broader term that is all-encompassing. In Boruto, Sarada calls Boruto a nakama on the same team. Boruto calls all his classmates nakama. It's just a word to mean a member of the same group, and doesn't necessarily imply anything about the actual closeness of the relationship beyond that. Meanwhile, a friend is someone who sticks close in a bro kind of way, so in the light novels, Mitsuki and Shikadai are described as Boruto's close friends. Sarada also calls Chocho and Sumire friends. Boruto and Sarada are osana najimi, or childhood friends, but it doesn't actually contain the word for friend, tomodachi, yujin, shinyu, and is a whole different thing that I talk about more in my movie novel analysis of them. But anyway, I just wanted to say that's why it's important that the phrase here in Japanese was nakagai, or get along well, instead of saying something like friend or best bud as the official put it. Because getting along well can be anything from you have a mutual appreciation for each other as good people, friends, teasing someone about potential romantic feelings, and of course it's also what you say when two people, usually boy and girl, fight with each other to tease them, which I've already explained a lot of times why in Japanese culture, fighting means that you're close. And I also forgot to put this point in, but the reason I say that it's important that Chocho says it this way is because I think ever since the academy days, Chocho knew that Sarada liked Boruto, especially from that scene where her hands were shaking when he was fighting Iwabe, and Chocho goes, oh, I thought this didn't bother you at all, and Sarada's like, it doesn't, and she pretends like her hands weren't shaking, and Chocho just kind of goes, like that kind of knowing kind of way. So I feel like she already knew, but she wasn't going to pressure Sarada about it because she knows Sarada and knows that that's not something Sarada would ever admit to or even wants to talk about. But that's why it's important that she said it that way, because it implies that Chocho knows that he wasn't just a best bud or a bro-zoned friend. Either way, that's that. Next, we have the Boruto is legit line. The Japanese there was kore wa gachi. It's a slang that's taking over the use of maji by young teens in today's society, but either way, it's a slang. I like the way this was translated because kore wa gachi literally means this is serious, or this is for real, or that's the truth. But it's being used despite the slanginess of it in a more serious setting. Chocho is the only one who can say things like this with a serious tone. I liked the official's translation because it used a slang while still giving off that serious tone. I also received a question about the he's totally hot scene, so let's get to that too. あとやっぱ、美女がクソイケメン。結局そこだよね。The official is, and he's really hot. I can totally see it now. The literal is, also, he's fine as word I can't say, visually speaking. And the end, it's all about that, isn't it? She literally uses the word kso with a chisaitsu in katakana for emphasis, so she thinks Boruto's a major snack. And a lot of Chocho slang is kanji for meaning with the slang pronunciation on the side. Yoshi is a word that describes physical appearance, and the reading is biju, which is short for visuaru or visuals. However, the official did that thing they always do, where for some reason, when it comes to these Sarada lines, they make it seem like she's denying something she's not. I think this is the third time now. I genuinely think the official has some sort of bias against Sarada because it's constantly like this, and people always try to use it as proof she had no feelings. But she never actually denies her feelings for Boruto. She always just is like, huh? I mean, she always deflects or does something that isn't a direct dismissal, but like, anyway. Chocho is conveying that Sarada probably switched to Boruto's side instead of Kawaki's because Boruto is hot. Like, seriously hot. Like, so hot she couldn't help herself from switching sides. And when push comes to shove, even if she doesn't want to admit it, at her core, her decision was based around him being hot. For sure. Sarada's response is, huh? Yeah, 違うし. The official is, huh? That's not... The literal is, the heck? No, that's not even... This, huh? In Japanese is very, like, taken aback, in a kind of the heck kind of way. She casually follows it up with, nah, that's not really it. I think you're missing the whole point here. So again, Sarada isn't denying Boruto is attractive. She literally calls him objectively attractive in the novels. She's just saying she didn't suddenly switch sides because Boruto was so much hotter that she couldn't resist him, as Chocho is implying. Next, we have the Kawaki is a baddie line. She literally used the same word that she used for Boruto, the normal ikemen, except it had no extra emphasis or adjectives. Chocho says this about a lot of guys. I don't know whether it's always translated to baddie or not. It's just whatever autofill term you want to use for a hot guy. Either way, Chocho is definitely starting to accept Boruto now, so maybe her and Sarada and Sumire can go back to having a friendship like the good old days again. It's implied that it's been a while. Sumire in the house. I already talked a little about this over on X, but I really liked this translation. Even if you can't speak Japanese, if you've watched subbed anime, you'll probably pick up on the vibes from me reading this line. But it was, Sumire-chan desu. You know how Chocho probably remembers Sumire from the academy, if you count all that stuff as canon, which for right here I feel like it should be counted despite Nua and Joga not being incorporated at all and nothing other than the school field trip and Sumire's nickname being class rep really being referenced. But either way, it's up to Ikemoto to pick and choose what he includes and what he doesn't. For now, we know that in the academy arcs, Sumire was always going around saying hawa wa, flustered, shy, etc. After graduation, she was introduced into the manga as quite forward with Sarada in chapter 18 and 19 in terms of putting her shoulders back, declaring her feelings, and winking at the end of it, and has stayed that way consistently in the manga ever since. Chocho and Sumire talked briefly in chapter 74 for a panel maybe, but other than that, they haven't really interacted in the manga, so this is the first time Chocho is seeing Sumire's forward personality. This line, the way she introduces herself and does this peace sign, it's like an idol on stage at a performance. It's like the girly girl of the class drawing attention to herself, not in a bad way, but just in like a, hello, I'm here, and very much not shy kind of way, with her cutesy introduction. I have a friend that does this as a joke sometimes, and everyone is always like, eh, in response. The reason I like this translation is because it encompasses that forwardness and that kind of idol-like nature of the introduction, even if it doesn't quite get the cutesy aspect, because of the chan, you don't usually put honorifics on your own name. She's purposefully being asked to be called in this cutesy kind of way, like, call me Sumire-chan. Obviously, this startles Chocho because it's a complete change to how she was in the academy and a complete change from the person she's been in the anime. I'm so glad Ikemoto addressed this in this way because it makes the distinction so much more clear to anime onlys, and it's also something that would be easy to adapt post time skip as just a change brought about by Boruto's absence, even though she's always been way more forward and cutesy since her introduction in the manga, like I mentioned earlier. Either way, like I've been saying, this is not a bad thing. This is normal in Japanese culture. It's just the kind of character Sumire is and has been for a while in the manga and is inherently different from how she was acting in the anime. I know in the West, like, acting this way is, like, seen as a bad, negative thing, but it's not seen that way in Japan. It's seen as cute. Anyway, you can see that on full display, finally, in the chapter with irrefutable understanding from the canon characters who were friends back then themselves that she has changed. Now we have Boruto and Code. If you really want to know all the nuance here, my translation livestream is great to watch. Code's dialogue is so fun for me to translate. I also started focusing on it more seriously here instead of responding to chats. But other than Boruto just taunting him, there isn't much to remark on language-wise. I just really liked the way that I translated that bit. So if you want to check it out on the livestream, go ahead and check out the end. Final page side text. ボルトの善意も虚しく燃え腐るバグの魂。そして高度は次になる計画は Boruto's goodwill proves to be futile as Bug's soul rots. What will Code's next move be? This word zengi is about noble intentions. Boruto really did intend to revive Bug out of the goodness of his heart, even if he was just an enemy like Koji says. But he wasted too much time taunting Code and ultimately failed. Now the cliffhanger for the next chapter is, what will Code do? We'll likely be getting our answer soon. That brings us to the end of the language section, so let me get into any other things I didn't cover in terms of questions people had for me from X and Reddit and YouTube, as well as a few personal reflections on the chapter. Ida and Damon, on page 5. I was asked for my interpretation of the scene by a user, although language-wise there isn't much special going on out of the usual between these two. What I'm really interested in this scene is why Ada looks from Chocho and Konohamaru, and then Damon questions her and she looks over to Boruto and Kawaki. Specifically, she looks closely at Kawaki and narrows her eyes. Maybe it's just me, but I think what Mitsuki said is starting to get to her. Kawaki didn't really make any special efforts to protect her during that fight. He wasn't worried about her after it was over. Meanwhile, Boruto actually flew in specifically to help her when Daemon couldn't keep up, even though I know Kawaki was down and out for the count at that point. I also think it's strange that despite so many people being on the battlefield close to her, no one is having their usual Ida reactions. She was in danger. Shouldn't everyone be worried to death about her because of her charm powers? Yet they all seem to be focused directly on the mission, which, yes, is for her sake. But in comparison to the chapter where they all met her for the first time and clammed up, perhaps they'd already gotten used to it? Or maybe they were just too far away for it to take effect. When does a man become a monster? So I watched Epic the Musical for the first time the other day because a friend recommended it to me, and this chapter kind of reminds me of this song. How far is Boruto willing to go for the people he cares about? The "you'll never be any more than just trees" line was a pretext to justify killing a Shinju despite their human forms. He's made efforts to save every human being so far, even Kobu. But this chapter, he's too focused on taunting Code and lets Bug rot. He does apologize that he doesn't make it in time, but he easily could have stabbed Bug's soul thorn into the tree while fighting or gone straight for the kill instead of talking trash. Does Boruto not want to take the life of an enemy even at the risk of Sarada becoming a hostage? Or was he trying to justify it by having Code come at him with the intent to kill beyond his failed surprise attack? Is he thinking about the chance that Code will become their ally? For the kind of person Boruto is, I feel like he believes in his ability to save Sarada even if Code were to get to her. I think he also believes that Code doesn't deserve to die if there's a chance he'll come over to their side, and I also think he was taunting Code because he was emotionally worked up about Sarada being a target. And that's why he didn't end up saving Bug. Koji justifies Bug's death with him being their enemy, but if it was Hidari's soul thorn in Boruto's hands, he wouldn't have hesitated. I think this was the first crack in the goodwill in Boruto's character, even though he did go into the dimension with the intention to save Bug's life. I'd be interested to see more on this in the future with Momoshiki as well as tough choices, especially if it comes down to a future where he has to choose who to save and ultimately can't pick both. But I also think if anyone was going to rot, the person to rot had to be Bug. The other characters were too important to just kill off, which brings me to my next theory that came about from this chapter. Death incoming? A lot has been revolving around the revival from complete death in Boruto. Whether it's the Otsuki reviving themselves through their karma, or Amado trying to revive his completely dead daughter, the show does deal more quietly with themes of bringing the dead back to life. Now that Himawari can heal even major injuries as long as she gets to them in time, a lot of the threat for being injured has been lifted from the tension of fight scenes. But there's a few things Himawari doesn't have the solution for. One of those is Sarada's blindness, another is karma, and a third is a rotted soul thorn, presumably. Why would Koji tell Boruto to burn that scenery into his eyes? And more importantly, what happens to a Shinju if they devour their target? We still haven't gotten the answer to that question, and there's only two Shinju left, Hidari and Jura. So unless a new one is born, if we're going to see someone get devoured, it's either going to be Sarada or Naruto. Despite Jura's interest in Naruto, he definitely can't get to him right now. So that leaves the Hidari fight, which a lot of Two Blue Vortex has been centering around since its start. He was the first to be introduced to the tree, aside from Soegi who protected Sarada in Chapter 2. The hug happened as a result of Boruto attempting to explain his guilt to Sarada over the situation. He was the first Shinju they fought and failed against after Team 10's interaction with Jura. He was the first Shinju with a solo cover. He was the first Shinju to be turned into his Thorn Soul. And he was the last humanoid Shinju that are based on a real person to have a battle arc centered around. The Baku MV came out in light of this upcoming fight as well, so I have a feeling there's going to be a lot hinging on it that it's a bit unexpected. Either way, it seems like Boruto as a show is gearing up to revive someone from death, so I have a feeling that something is going to happen where someone is going to die, whether it's Boruto, Sarada, Sasuke, Naruto, or even Kawaki, and all this stuff with Amado's daughter and karma is going to come into fruition in order to attempt to revive that person. That's my theories for you. Sorry this chapter review is late. I had a midterm project I didn't realize was due on the 22nd and had to finish that up. Luckily, I was able to use my chapter translation in it, so it all worked out. In other exciting news, I just finished my Hiragana series. So if you want to learn Japanese from me, now is a great time to get started. It's got a mini Naruto story that progresses each lesson for reading practice, and they're mostly Naruto, Boruto, anime-themed lessons, so it's great for you if you're not trying to pass the JLPT and just want to learn for anime-related analysis or to enjoy watching your favorite anime and manga while understanding all the subtleties of the language, because the JLPT will not get you that anyways. That's all I have for you today. Hopefully it wasn't too boring. See you next month.